Welcome to the Commonwealth Club. I'm George Hammond, Chair of the Humanities Forum, which organized tonight's event. I'd like to welcome our online audiences. We have no live audiences as usual under the crisis conditions that we're working, and this is another one of many online programs that the Commonwealth Club is bringing to you. Along with the help of our tech staff, we have done dozens and dozens of these programs since March. And today it's my great pleasure to introduce both Suzanne Mettler and Robert Lieberman, the co-authors of a book, Four Threats, The Recurring Crises of American Democracy. Extremely timely book and right on point for all kinds of things that people are very intrigued about. And what I really liked about the book was that you set the context for the problems that we've had, and that the problems that we have right now that are facing our democracy have happened many times before. But you do make the observation that the four main threats to democracy are all taking place right now, and this is the first time in 225 years or so that that's happened. So welcome to the Commonwealth Club. We really appreciate that you joined us online. So Suzanne, how did you, first of all, I take it that your colleagues or you know each other to work together on a book, you probably knew each other ahead of time. So in writing the book, who came up with the idea, and how did you sort out what the four threats were and the four parts of democracy? Because it's very clear, and that's usually one person rather than two people figuring it out. So how did that happen?
Well, Rob and I have known each other for a long time, since back when we were in graduate school and writing our dissertations. Mm-hmm. And so we've, always stayed in touch about things. And
I was 10, 11, 12, I don't remember, in line for the movies. And there were two guys in line in front of us, like 3 or 4 people in front of us holding hands. And my mother pulled me to her, not my siblings, just me, and looked at my father and said, "They're weird," which just made me look at those guys. And I went, oh, now I get it. I'm weird like they're weird. And I looked at them and I thought, they look happy. They look like they're in love. I'll be fine.
Inform brings you incredible stories.
I left 2 days before the revolution. It killed me so hard.
James has never experienced the taste of fruits that haven't been attacked by pesticides, just like he's never experienced a neighborhood that hasn't been attacked by bullets. Some things just go hand in hand.
People say what's on their mind.
I think that it is a cardinal sin to lie to the American people about war.
Partisanship is a version of narcissism.
In downtown San Francisco, the Commonwealth Clubs and Forum curates events that bring you face to face with the world's changemakers.
1/3 of the wage gains that women have made since the 1960s were made as a result of the birth control pill.
Twitter is a technology that I don't think we've seen before in this world.
Since 1903, the most innovative leaders have come to the Commonwealth Club to share their vision.
sharing cars, sharing their homes, sharing a shared dream, a shareable American dream. That could work.
You each can play a role in helping us chart a better future.
Housing and health and education and policy all live close to the surface in us when our children are murdered. It's all the same story.
We bring together the visionaries shaping the emerging trends in technology.
It was a combination of Instant and Telegram. It was the idea that you could take a moment in time and you could capture it and you could just send it out and broadcast it with the entire world.
I just threw this site together in about a week when I was at school.
Oh, great.
We've got angels, we've got incubators, we've got accelerators, we've got seed funds, we've got crowdfunding.
We eat, we drink.
One of our first dates ever, we pickled like 100 pounds of herring and made 300 pounds of sauerkraut.
Wow. Yay! We never shy away.
75% of the people of this country want universal health care and expect it. And damn it, let's go.
Concentrated, deep, slow, loving, tender, passionate sex.
Whether you want to be on the cusp of current events or feast on pop culture,
I should have a great time writing it. I should write a book that is as fun as any party I'd be skipping.
Inform events are fun and action-packed.
I have an anthropology scarf that does that twisty thing, so.
Come feed your mind and soul and celebrate the future with Inforum.
I love San Francisco, and every time I come back here, I remember that this is the only city in America that has magic.
Hi everyone, I'm Crystal Contreras and I'm the director of Inforum. Welcome to today's program. Every night is pizza night with the Food Lab's J. Kenji Lopez Alt and artist Gigi Ruggiero. This conversation will be moderated by SF Chronicle food critic Saleho. If you'd like to ask any of our speakers a question during our program, you can do that in either the chat or comment section of the live stream that you're watching. The Commonwealth Club has suspended in-person events for the time being, but we are dedicated to keeping you informed during this pandemic. We're going full speed ahead with a full slate of live online programs. Most of these conversations are currently free to the public, so we do ask that you consider donating to the club to help us continue our work. Visit us at commonwealthclub.org/online to learn more, and you can also text the word donate to 415-329-4231 live during this program. You can find this information and more in the description box. Now, please join me in welcoming Kenji Lopez Alt, Gigi Ruggiero, and Saleho to Inforum.
Thanks, Crystal. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's virtual program with Inforum at the Commonwealth Club. I'm Saleho, restaurant critic for the San Francisco Chronicle. Today, it's a pleasure to be in conversation with J. Kenji Lopez Alt and Gigi Ruggiero. Kenji is an award-winning chef, author, and restaurant owner. He's a New York Times food columnist and is behind Serious Eats' The Food Lab. Gigi Ruggiero is an illustrator, video game designer, and animator for films such as Toy Story 3 and many others. They are here to discuss their new children's book, Every Night is Pizza Night, which includes illustrations by Gigi and words by Kenji. So just as a reminder, if you'd like to ask Kenji and Gigi a question, please ask it in the chat if you're watching it on YouTube, or in the comments if you're watching on Facebook. So let's get started. Thanks for joining me this afternoon, Kenji and Gigi.
Hi, Soleil.
Hey. Good to see you, and good to see all this pizza too.
Yes, that's all Gigi.
So just to start, at its most basic level, can you tell me about the book? What is it about? What's the deal?
Yeah, well, I'll go first, and Gigi, you want to go after?
Sure.
Or the other way? All right. Well, I mean, plot-wise, the book is about a young girl who believes that pizza is the best food in the world and therefore is the only food worth eating. And it's about her discovering that this is not the case and that there are other foods out there. Ultimately, it's a book about family and community and open-mindedness and multiculturalism and, being open to new experiences and learning how other people see the world through the lens of pizza and other foods.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kenji summed it up really well. And yeah, it's just, food is this gateway sometimes into other cultures that we don't experience. So, yeah.
So Kenji, most of your fans know you as a blogger, a writer of many articles, a columnist for New York Times, and someone who's written a really awesome cookbook. So why a kid's book? Why now?
Well, a kid's book because I had a kid, and now because I had that kid. Well, it came out now when we started working on this almost 3 years ago now, when my daughter was about 6 months old. It happened because I, when my daughter was born, I took a step back from everything. So I stopped working, I stopped writing, I stopped doing everything. I was a stay-at-home dad full time for a while. Taking care of a baby and raising a kid takes a lot of time, but there's also a lot of sort of unpredictable downtime. It makes it difficult to work with other people and hold a job when you have a baby, but babies sleep a lot. And they sleep at random times. So I would find myself with like 3 hours in the middle of the day or 2 hours in the afternoon or whatever with not much to do. And so I thought to myself, well, like now would be a good time to start some new personal projects. One of those was, consulting for a restaurant that I ended up being a partner in, which is not a good thing to do when you have a child. But the other one was a kid's book, which was a very fun project for me. Very difficult, but a very fun one. I mainly wanted to write it for her, which is what I did. It seemed like, the messages in the book were ones that were important to me, important lessons that I wanted to make sure that my daughter understood growing up. Already by the time she was 6 months old, I think her first solid food was pizza. Certainly, like within the first, we did baby-led weaning, which is where like basically as soon as she's old enough to sit up, so at 6 months old, essentially, she started on solid foods. So certainly, like within the first week that she was on solid foods, she was eating pizza, and she loved it. So, and I love pizza. So, yeah, it seemed natural to make that sort of the subject of the book. That's why a children's book, and that's why now.
So the thing that I find really interesting about children's books is that the collaboration between writer and illustrator is so intimate and it's so essential. And I think you two found each other over Twitter, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was. I mean, it was like fated pretty much because it was like October. I can't remember, October 27th or something, 2017. That was when I started. I had started thinking about writing a book a little bit before that. I hadn't even told my publisher that I was thinking about this at that point. But I wanted to find an illustrating partner, so I went on Twitter and I said, does anyone know, like, if anyone knows anyone who's worked on children's books and is looking for a project, like, have them message me. And like just that morning, Gigi had tweeted that she had been laid off and was looking for a new project to work on. And so someone on Twitter, like, who follows both of us, I guess, connected us. And
bless them.
Yeah. Kind of went from there. And I had a bunch of people sent me their portfolios and links to their portfolios and stuff. And when I saw Gigi's portfolio, it was like instantly like, yes, this is the one. This is the right one, the right fit.
Yeah, not every internet relationship works so well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like for some reason I'm lucky, but my art, social media, I follow a lot of artists and things like that, and people I know, and the art community, I think I will say in my experience, I've had a pleasant one. I haven't really experienced terrible things. I know that's not true for everybody, but yeah, it was really crazy. And at the time I was living in Somerville in Boston, Massachusetts, and so we did a lot of just phone calls, and I was like, sure, yeah, let's do this. Anything, it's just like, anybody, please. So I was really excited, and and it was my first time learning about Kenji too, and so it was like, oh, wow, Kenji, he seems like a big deal, huh? Because sometimes you get a lot of, I've gotten a lot of emails from very strange people. They're like, I have this great idea for this movie. Can you animate it all? And I don't want to tell you what it is. And so it was a really amazing and like fated. It was destiny in some ways.
Yeah, I'd love to hear you both talk about what you saw in each other that made you think like, this is it.
Well, for me, it was, in Gianna's, it was looking through Gianna's portfolio, and for me, it was really, her illustrating style, which is like very rooted in reality, but also sort of magical and whimsical, which is sort of, the feel that I wanted for the book, and something that I really instantly connected to, and sort of seeing magic in everyday things going on. Also, she has a very good way of drawing from a child's perspective, and that sort of, I guess sort of similar, a similar idea, sort of that like awe and awe and wonder that children see in the world, and noticing really interesting magical things in everyday life. I was also sort of drawn to her drawings of cities and more sort of urban landscapes, which originally wasn't going to be part of the book, but then when I saw her illustrations there, and then we started discussing more about the plot of the book, as well as talking with our editors, that's when we sort of decided, hey, rather than having originally the girl was going to be was going to be traveling around the world trying foods, and somehow it made sense that like a 4-year-old would be on an airplane, or traveling by herself around the world. But then looking at Gigi's drawings, it sort of made sense to refocus it, and we started thinking, hey, well, what if instead of traveling around the world, she just traveled around the world by going through her neighborhood, so that all sort of seemed to fit into place. It was really just looking at a portfolio and thinking that this is a perfect match for the tone of the book that I'd like to go for.
Thank you. That's so sweet. So sweet, really. Yeah. And I guess we started to talk like when we first I remember I was at a dog park and we were talking about the book, and you're like, oh, I don't know if it's going to be like an APC kind of book, like what age group yet. And it was still, this process of trying to figure it out, but knowing that like food was definitely the center part of it. And, I think we got into, this young girl who was trying food and like food from all over the world. And exactly like Kenji says, like it's very much about experiencing different cultures and like opening up. And I think we got on the idea of a city, because we started to push it a little more towards like, personal feelings and, and our experiences. And, Kenji, we live in the Bay Area. And so, and I grew up in Philadelphia. And so cities are something that I'm used to. And, and just being so close to so many different people and, just cultures all around you. It's really easy to see I also envision myself as a young girl, I'd go out with my friends and we'd walk around the corner and go get Allianz, and which is a Middle Eastern place. And then I'd go get, a cheesesteak, or I'd go to my local, Thai restaurant. So it was very easy for me to start to see this young girl kind of the idea of like, oh, maybe she's in an apartment building and she's knocking on her neighbor's doors and being like, hey, what are you making in there? I remember there was an idea about a calendar at one point, like days of the week, but it was
there's a whole bunch of different formats that we thought of to tell this, to tell the story. The very initial idea I had was like, all right, it'll just be an ABC book. There won't even be a main character. It would just be like 26 different countries, 26 different dishes, because I want my daughter to learn from food around the world. And that was sort of like the idea. And then it was like, well, you know what? It would be more interesting if there was a character who's experiencing these things, and you could sort of experience them through the lens of character. So it was like one girl traveling to 26 countries and eating 26 foods. And it was like, well, maybe it would connect a little bit better if it was actually a story and it had some, and it, you know, and it had some better messaging that other than simply this exists. And so, you know, and then it really became a matter of editing down the story. Like, you know, the first draft of the story that I wrote, I don't remember if I ever sent it to Gigi or not, but it was like 8 or 10,000 words or something. It was gigantic. And, you know, way more than a kid's book should ever be. But, you know, that was sort of my process of learning how to write a kid's book, was like, just get everything out on paper and then figure out what the core themes are and what the real message of the story is going to be. And, you know, and for me, it really did gel when we came up with the idea of putting her sort of travels into a city, because, you know, not only did it make the plot of the story easier to sort of manage and a little more realistic, but it also made it feel a lot more sort of relevant to my life and to, you know, I grew up in New York and Gianna grew up in Philadelphia, so we made it more relevant to our lives and our experiences, as well as I think, you know, sort of timely given everything that's going on in the country and in the world right now. So, you know, having a book that really focuses on the importance of multiculturalism within a city and within your own environment seemed like a good, positive message to be putting out right now.
So you went from 26 countries to just a handful of, you know, cultural cuisines. Like, how did you decide in the end? I'm sure you had to really just be brutal in what you cut out of that first draft.
Yeah, I mean, you know, well, part of it was like, of course there is, like, you know, I don't want to say there's like a checklist, but there, you know, of course, like, it's like I wanted to try and visit disparate parts of the world. Like, I didn't want everything coming from Europe or everything coming from Asia. So, you know, I wanted to make sure that there was representation from multiple parts of the world. You know, ultimately it came down to, you know, these are dishes that I love, and these are also dishes. Part of it was also like, I was thinking in advance, like, you know, if kids are going to be reading these books with their parents, they're probably also going to want to be interested in trying these foods and maybe cooking them with their parents. And so part of what I'm doing right now is I just started this new column on Serious Eats called Food Lab Junior, and the first 5 installments of that column, it's a column on cooking and food science aimed at parents or adults who want to cook with young children and teach the children sort of science and technique along the way. But the first 5 installments of that column, the first one just went up on Monday, are all the foods that Pipo, the character, eats in the book as she travels around her neighborhood. So on this past Monday, a recipe for Ronnie and Donnie's dumplings went up. Next week there will be red beans and rice, and then we'll be doing bibimbap, pozole, and what was the last one? Oh, and tagine. So, you know, they're foods that I thought represented a very diverse set of techniques. You know, some of them are based on spices. Some of them are all about spices. Some of them are all about texture. Some of them are about, you know, long, slow simmering and comfort in red beans and rice. So you know, they all sort of represent different ways people can think about food, and they also sort of represent distinct cultures. And that was sort of the important part of the book, is that, you know, in the story she thinks pizza is the best because it tastes great. And then she also discovers it's the best because you can share it very easily. It's like built for sharing at the end. But, you know, but other people in the book think, well, this, you know, bibimbap is the best because it's my old family recipe and it reminds me of my family. Like tagine is the best because I came to this country and this reminds me of home. Red beans and rice is the best because it's what my mom used to make for my dad when he was feeling sad, or to make him feel, you know, to bring him some more comfort. And, you know, these dumplings are the best because it's the heart of our business. Like we started this food truck that sells dumplings. So, you know, there's different reasons why people think different foods are the best. So for me, it was important to bring a sort of diverse range of foods and reasons why people might think various foods are good or not.
So the thing I really admire about the book is its rhythm, right? Like, it's really, it brings you through this very slow process of tasting a food and then and cooking it and coming to understand it. And for most humans, tasting is something that happens really quickly. You know, you don't dwell on it over the course of 2 pages. So I would love to hear about how you're able to tease that out and really boil down something that's really complicated that happens on a subconscious level, and depict it through illustration and through words.
Gianna, do you want to talk about, actually, maybe we can put up, I think we have illustrations we can put up that maybe are going to show up right now. Maybe everyone's seeing them already right now, and I'm not sure. But but Gianna, do you want to talk about your process for those spreads?
Yeah, so I think, you know, the book kind of is in these like two places, right? Where it's in reality and then it's in this tasting magical space, right? And you know, I think it was important. I remember we talked about, like, you know, being in the kitchen and you know, people helping out in the kitchen, and helping, you know, the different characters make their food. And so, you know, it's about, like, I think for me, I think a lot about like growing up, you know, with my mom, and my mom's a cook and we're all Italian. And so it's very giant stereotypical, everything you think, yes, that's exactly what it's like. But it was just me and my mom in the kitchen a lot. And so, you know, I'd watch her cook or like make her tomato sauce or pasta or whatever we're making that night. And you know, I remember sort of being the same size as Peepo, and like, you know, I remember that scale difference of just like, you know, adults are just so big and everything around you so big, and you had to like stand on, you know, like a little stool just to get up and see what was being made. And so I wanted like that feeling. And then, you know, Peepo has this hesitation of like, this looks strange. And like, you know, a lot of kids and adults even feel that way about food when they see something like, I don't know. So I wanted to kind of narrate that feeling of like, you know, the first illustration. If you go to maybe the spread of her tasting bibimbap, I think it's the one where she's like floating in yellow. But you can see that she's like hesitant, and then she tastes it. And like the idea of, you know, especially something like bibimbap where there's like all these flavors to that dish. And, you know, you start to, when you're really experiencing food like that you are really enjoying, I guess I think of it as like layers and moments in time, because you're like, ooh, I taste the saltiness, and ooh, now I'm tasting this like tanginess, or, you know, whatever it is. So trying to like, and that's the representation of, you know, Peepo in those different poses. Like she's like, ooh, the meat is so savory, and then like she starts to taste, you know, the spiciness of bibimbap. And then, you know, the like in Kenji's words, and Kenji's words of course were very helpful in, you know, helping me illustrate, which is like the crunchy cool cucumbers and carrots, and how that kind of makes, you know, the spiciness cool down, and like cooling down feels like a slide. And you know, so it's just like, you know, you just try to, you know, put visuals to language, and what something, if something's hot and spicy, you'll probably be, you know, kind of, you know, like Peepo has fire coming out of her mouth, and, you know, so it's, you know, and also taking it into like this magical realm of like, you know, because how do you illustrate taste? Taste is something that you experience. And so just like, you know, I think putting it more into the fantastical kind of roots it somehow in reality, you know, and have visual language of what you're actually tasting.
To me, you know, to me, it your background in video games kind of comes through in this. You know, I was thinking about this. So right now, my daughter is really into Mario, and we've been playing Super Mario Odyssey. And there's I don't know if you've played it at all, Gigi, but there's so there's the Luncheon Kingdom world in it, which is like your Mario, but like everybody, all the characters are forks, and like there's like giant pots of food and stuff. And so that all the pictures of Peepo, like where she's like this like tiny little person, like peering over this giant tagine, and there's these like pieces of chicken that are bigger than her and stuff, where she's like sliding down a water slide of carrots and cucumbers, just like reminds me of like the video language of the the visual language of video games a lot, and like how you can play with scale and envision yourself in these sort of crazy environments. But it is like those pages, those two-page spreads which occur every time she tastes a new food. Always somehow remind me of playing a video game, and it makes which I guess it's because they feel like there's so much motion in them, and it feels like you really are this like little character who's like in all these different positions, and I can picture myself like sliding around these different foods and like going into these crazy giant bowls of beans and whatnot.
Yeah, in what way does that reflect your philosophy over how to get kids to try new things?
So for me, well, there's a number of things that I do with my daughter. My daughter, like I've been very lucky that my daughter is not a picky eater. I mean, so she's picky in the sense that I think every kid likes to have control. Kids I think often feel powerless about controlling their own lives because they often are. They don't get too many choices, which is and so that's why I think a lot of kids, especially when it comes to food, this is like the one place where they can say, like, I'm not going to do it, or like, I refuse. I want this one. I want that one, where they really have a bit more control, where they have some amount of control, and they can, and so they like to express their opinions around food. And sometimes even just make up opinions because it's, it's like, she'll be like, today I don't like carrots. Like she loves carrots, but she's like, today I don't want carrots. It's like, okay, like today you don't want carrots because like, you need some outlet of expression, right? You need to feel some kind of control in your life. So so she's picky in the sense that on a given day she might decide she wants one thing and not the other, and then the next day change her mind. But overall, like she'll eat anything. She like her favorite foods are fish eyeballs and broccoli and tofu. But but one of the ways that I get her to eat is, and it's the same way that I get her to sort of learn about things, is that we sort of I try and make dinner, like meals, a sort of like learning experience. So it's like if we say, like, one thing I'll do is like, we have cucumbers here and we have yogurt on our plate, and I'll say like, all right, like try the cucumber and like tell me what that texture is, and like now try the yogurt and tell me what that texture is. All right, now try cucumber and yogurt together and see how it makes them taste different. And so she really enjoys that, and she does that now. She does that back to like, now she's a little bit older, she does that back to me and Audrey, my wife. She'll say, Papa, take this chicken and put it in the hot sauce and put a carrot at the same time and put it in your mouth. And so she gets really excited about that. So the idea of in the book, the girl, she's into science, and so when she's hesitant to try a new food, she tells herself, all right, like, I don't need to do this, I don't want to do this, but I will do it. I'll do it for science. I'll do it because I'm curious about the world, and I want to know more about it. Not because I really want to eat food, but just because I'm curious about the world in general. And so that's very reflective, I think, of how I get my daughter to try new experiences. Like she tries new things because it's something new, not necessarily because she's particularly excited about the thing that she sees. But then eventually, just like people in the book, I think you find that a lot of times when you make yourself try something new, you do discover that it's pretty cool. It's in many ways it's also sort of reflective of my life. I think a lot of people, myself included, are sort of hesitant, afraid of change, and I've had like a couple of big moves in my life, like moving out to San Francisco 5 years ago from New York, where I grew up. That was like a big change and a big challenge for me. But it was one of those things where it's like, all right, like, how bad could it be? Just like, it's like, oh no, like the ocean's on the wrong side, like the weather's, it doesn't snow, it's going to be so different. But it was one of those things like, all right, like I should try it, I should give it a shot. And so I did it, and I was like, oh, actually this is pretty cool. Like, this is a brand new experience, this is fun. That's how I convince myself to try new things, and that's how I often convince my daughter to try new things. So it just seems sort of like a natural experience to draw from, to put into the book.
Yeah, and it makes sense that this is a book about multiculturalism too, where, trying new foods is an analogy for going out there and meeting new people and having a little bit of cultural humility when it comes to meeting new people. And you said earlier that this is a value that is even more pressing right now. And I'd love to hear you both talk about, how that populated the book and just why it's so important to you as a concept.
I mean, I without getting like deeply into politics right now, I think it should be obvious to a lot of people why, I feel that, multiculturalism and immigration and immigrant communities are under attack right now in around the world, and particularly in the U.S. And as a business owner and an employer who employs a lot of immigrants, as someone who grew up in a city that a diverse city that was populated by immigrants, and as the son of my mom came here from Japan when she was a teenager as the son of an immigrant, and my wife is an immigrant. I think multiculturalism has always sort of played an important role in my life. When I was in college, I lived in a house that was it was a co-ed fraternity, but it was a house that was about 80% international students, and that's actually sort of where that's where I first started cooking in college, and that's where my current love of diverse food influences comes from. I spent when I was a senior in college, I started cooking for that fraternity house dinners, and one of the things I did was every Sunday I would talk with a student, one of my classmates, talk about food that they missed from home, and then spend the week researching and testing recipes. And then on Sundays, I would try and make a meal with that student from their home. And living in a house with 50 students, 40 of them who were from different countries all around the world, it gave me a lot of opportunities to learn about different foods and different cultures. So that that's where my love of food from around the world came from. But food, especially right, even pre-coronavirus, I think the importance of multiculturalism and immigrant cultures was important. But now it's, I think, in even more stark contrast, because what happens, at least for me, what I've experienced is that we're losing third places, and even after COVID is hopefully behind us, a lot of the restaurants that populated downtown areas, a lot of restaurants that mom and pop places that are not going to survive this, right? They're not going to reopen, and I think we're going to reopen to a much more homogenous food landscape than we had been in pre-COVID. I think that's a really big shame, because there are many ways, there are many windows into culture, but food, I think, is one of the most accessible and the most easy, because food plays such an important role in almost every culture, because everybody eats, everybody gathers around to have meals the world over, and it's also just a very easy way to share your culture with other people, and give people a look into something that they might not have experienced before, in a way of looking at the world that they might not have thought about before. So, food, being open to new foods, I think, eventually leads to more empathy and more understanding, which is something that I think the world needs a lot more of right now.
So before we toss it to Gigi, just to be clear, so by third places, you mean those sort of gathering spots outside of home and work, right?
Exactly, yes.
Your thoughts, Gigi?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what Kenji says, I completely agree with. And, I think, food is this very primal, like, everybody needs food, everyone needs to eat. And it's this very primal sort of nourishing thing that we give to people, and we give to our families and to our friends. And, if you open a restaurant, you give to your community. And food can be this sort of gateway into understanding a culture. And like, I think about my mother talking about how when she was a little girl, she'd have eggplant parm for lunch, and people would be like, this is strange. And and because I'm second generation, I guess, immigrant. My grandparents all immigrated from Italy, and how now Italian food is just this staple. It's not even, it's just on every menu. If you go walk into any restaurant, it's there. And how, part of that is, our skin color matched the skin color of what was perceived to be okay here. So, so Italian food sort of just meshed with American food, and pizza is now this staple of American culture. But I think that first, food, again, like food is this like nourishing, beautiful thing to give to somebody, and it's a way of it's a bridge, right? Like you can start to understand somebody. It's like, oh, this is delicious. I don't know what this is. It's like, how'd you make this? Oh, you made it in this thing. I've never seen that before. Like, and it's a way of starting to be in a very humble place of just like starting to learn and starting to accept. And again, like the times that we're living through right now, we just aren't, we aren't accepting people, and we aren't listening, and we aren't empathizing with what is going on and how people are hurting. And we are are very stuck in like, well, this is the way it should be. And it doesn't have to be, and if it means, I guess food is, yeah, I mean, it's like there's so much there that you could talk about. And yeah, I just think that it's super important. It's what makes, for me, I was lucky enough to just experience that, and go into my public school, and it was just diverse, and I didn't have to question things, and it was just felt normal. And it's like, oh, so when I started to go to college in Sarasota, Florida, that's when a whole new thing started to open up. Like all of a sudden I met a Mormon person, and I had no idea what Mormons were. It's like, what are Mormons? Like, so like, and so there was this whole world outside of Philly that I just didn't know about. Like my whole world at that time was like Philadelphia, New York City, because that's where the rest of my family were, in the Jersey Shore. So I had a very small, limited world. And even opening up to like being in Florida, I remember walking into a Waffle House and being like, this is amazing, I love Waffle House. Like and so I don't know, it's just like, it's such a, food is just this, it's just this gateway, and it's a way of just like understanding that we all are the same. And I know that sounds so tacky and cheesy and simple, right? That, oh, it's like we're all the same, we all like pasta, right? It comes from China, like the noodles, that whole thing. Like we're so integrated and so separated too, that it's like I don't understand the whole like putting your hands up towards something. And so that was a long-winded response, but yeah.
So I'd actually be interested to hear briefly your take on, as a restaurant critic, your take on what's going on right now, and the idea of restaurants, of losing third places, and restaurants closing, or I don't know, just your take on the whole situation right now, and what you think is going to happen when we start to reopen.
My take on life itself.
Yeah.
Well, I tend to agree with Gigi too, where we as a, gosh, you're just going to set me off, huh? The coronavirus has exposed our sort of deep lack of empathy for people who are not like us, right? Like people who are not in our camp, people who don't have healthcare, people who aren't in houses, people who don't have jobs, and people who work in roles that we traditionally consider to be like servile, right? Like people in the restaurant industry, for instance, janitors, nurses. So yeah, I think there's a lot that's been exposed about the way we arrange society, and the ways in which we compensate people for what they do. And the ins and the outs are very, very clear right now. It's almost like a political cartoon. It's like too dramatic. You know, it's so on the nose that if you wrote that, I would laugh at you because like that's ridiculous. So yeah, I think especially with restaurants, right? Like I think I wrote a piece for the Chronicle recently about this one sushi restaurant in downtown San Francisco that built these plastic domes over the outdoor tables to keep people safe from the elements and also from unhoused people in the neighborhood. And it's complicated, right? Like an omakase there is like $200 plus, but at the same time, they have nothing. You know, there's no universal health care. There's no basic income for their workers if they get fired. You know, if they hire immigrant workers, if they fire them, they'll have to be deported. But how do they even get home right now? It's all just a mess, right? So everyone's in a state of extreme desperation.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that's not
sus-
fun. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is the kids' books talk.
Yeah, it's not sustainable. It's just,
Right,
it's
right.
just, we just, you know, and taking care of each other and is, you know, and that's what food is, right? It's like, it's taking care of somebody and like making sure that they're fed and are you okay? Like, let's sit down, let's eat, you know, tell me about yourself. Like, you know, just the sitting down and sharing a meal is, you know, it's just a way to connect. And yeah, it's, you know, it's really sad what's going on out there. And, you know, it's in some ways it's shining this light on something that, you know, needs to be shined on. And, you know, people have just been sort of shielding their eyes from, and, but at the same time, it's overwhelming and there's so much complexity.
Right. I mean, speaking to that complexity, we've been hearing a lot from parents, especially, right? Like, how do I explain this to my kids? Like, how do, and all these topics that are touched on in the book are also quite complex. How do I talk to my kids about race or disability or mortality? Do you find that, I guess, you tried though, you took a crack at it. How was that experience?
Well, you know, for me, talking to my daughter about, you know, about complex subjects, I think everything always has to start from a point of empathy, and from getting your children to understand that their life is not everybody else's life, and that their life is not necessarily better or worse than other people's lives, or, you know, more valuable. That their values are not necessarily the same values other people have, and you know, it's something that I think adults need to do more of. It's just, you know, like trying to put yourself in other people's positions and thinking about what they might value and why they might value things differently than you do. So it's not just about, you know, it's not just about saying, oh yes, I love my fellow human. I want to be nice to everybody. You know, wanting to be nice to everybody is important, of course, but I think the best way to do that is to try and put yourself in their shoes, and not just think about, you know, how you would react to situations that they're in, but think about why they react to the situations they're in certain ways, and understand that maybe it's not just because they are you know, a different person, you know, not just because they're in different circumstances from you, but because they might have a fundamentally different understanding of you know, various values of, and a fundamentally different value system than you do, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Of course, you know, it all has to be put into into simpler terms for kids, but you know, kindness and empathy, I think, is where it all starts, and those are lessons that I think kids can grasp if you work at it.
And Gigi, like your depiction of the neighborhood, I think, espouses those values really implicitly, and, you know, I would argue explicitly. Is pretty obvious, right? The sort of like utopian neighborhood that people lives in, where everyone gets along and shares food. Can you talk about how you shaped the neighborhood, the character of it, and also just your argument that you are making with that scene setting?
Yeah, I mean, again, like it's rooted, like we talked about, we wanted it to be in San Francisco, and so, and you know, at the time when I started, you know, when I started illustrating this, I was in San Francisco, so it was just like a lot of reference gathering, and just like, you know, we talked about, oh, the Mission, Chinatown, you know, just these like iconic places that people know of, or don't, you know, whatever. and so I just wanted, like, the thing that the architecture here is different from, the architecture elsewhere, and making sure that, I got like a lot of that sort of, and I don't know what the term is for the architecture here, but like, the stucco and those like red bricks that kind of stack, and and I just wanted to make sure that it had that sort of, um, just that vibe. And food trucks, I thought that was, that came from Kenji, and I thought that was great. And even in the illustration that's being shown right now, I was like, that yellow building, that's where Peepo lives, and that's where she just went and talked to all her neighbors and experienced stuff. Now she's just running down the street, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna go try this dumpling truck, that's like right outside my house. And I remember, like, this was, we would call them trucks, like the silver, before like food trucks ever became a thing. We had the silver kind of things that latched onto cars, and you just get a bacon, egg, and cheese from, and it was just like heaven on earth. Like, best thing. So like, I thought about that. Like, there was always one parked outside of my high school, and like every morning kids would go there and get coffee and their breakfast, or and then we'd go into school. So I thought about that, and just like, maybe that's like something that, this is now, that's something that happened in the 90s for me. So this must be the new version for kids. This is like these cool food trucks with like dumplings on the side. Yeah.
As far as the sort of like the idea of a sort of like utopian neighborhood goes, I mean, it is obviously like the world that Peepo lives in. It obviously is like a very sort of utopian setting where everyone gets along and everyone is sharing. I think with a kid's book, and as I was writing this one, I read like hundreds of books because I didn't really know how to write a kid's book before this, so I just read and read and read. But that there are some kids books that really try and get a little more, a little more realistic and a little more sort of subversive, or a little more complex with their messaging. But the vast majority of the time with a kids book, and with the way children sort of try and understand the world, you do kind of create these utopian worlds, because you create, if you're trying to teach kids a lesson in morality or whatever, give them a message without being preachy about it. You kind of have to illustrate it in a way that they understand. And kids are not dumb, they're not stupid, but they also don't have the same experiences as adults, and so the idea of creating, of course, the world people's world is much simpler than the real world is. But that's just sort of a feature of children's books in general. The idea that you build a world based on the lesson that you're trying to express.
Yeah, no, I noticed. I like my kids' books with a lot more monsters and murders. So. We're close on time because we're going to throw to an audience Q&A soon. So I wanted to throw you to a quick softball. I would love to hear about your most, I guess, favorite childhood memory of food.
Gigi, you want to go first?
Oh, I know. So in the morning, I didn't really eat we didn't eat breakfast that much, but anytime like I was hungry, my mom would just make, I know this is strange, but she'd make grits. And I remember like she'd give me a little bowl of grits, and she'd put the butter and the salt and pepper, and I remember like bringing the bowl, and I'd turn on the TV and watch like, my PBS, Sesame Street, whatever was on Channel 12, which is where PBS was. And I would just like wait for the butter to like slowly melt, and I'd wait for it, and I was like this weird strategic, like wait for it in like pool in a little circle, and then when it would melt, I would like mix it in, and it was just like heaven on earth. And it was just like, I just loved it. It was like this, like, it's like my morning ritual. As adults we drink coffee, and as a kid it was like my grits and my cartoons.
Um, for me, I mean, this would change depending on what, just like my favorite food changes depending on like what day of the week you ask me. This would probably change. But last night I was up late writing an article about writing an article for the New York Times that's going to be coming out, I think, in a couple weeks. But it's about wok hei and that sort of that's smoky, intense flavor you get from Cantonese stir fries. And so in that article, I was talking about my memory of going to this restaurant. It was down at the bottom of Mott Street in New York. It was called Sun Lok Ki. It burned down in 2002. Like every good Chinese restaurant eventually burns down, I feel. But when my family moved to New York in the 80s when I was very little. But some of my earliest food memories are going to Sun Lok Ki with my dad, and him, like, it had these like aluminum framed smudged glass, like dirty doors that I just remember my dad like opening up and that's like smelling this like the smokiness from the wok coming out, like wafting out, and my dad would always go, I like this place, it has that nice smoky flavor. And so like I always associate that nice smoky flavor with like good Cantonese stir fries now, which I mean are some of my favorite foods. So yes, the beef chow fun, dry fried beef chow fun at Sun Lok Ki, and my dad being really into it is one of my favorite food memories.
Thanks. So now here are some audience questions, which I will read. So the first one is from Lynn. Food and art are both so creative. How do you keep that creativity while making it accessible for young children? Or are children more open-minded than adults?
Food and how do you keep? I would say that sort of just like I've heard comedians say that the most natural sounding jokes are the ones that they've worked the hardest on, and the ones that have been like edited to hell. And I would say like it almost feels the same way with I discovered, at least my experience writing a children's book, and also and Gianna can talk about her experience illustrating it. But I think coming up with a voice that sounds natural and engaging, and well, I hope engaging, and that speaks to children on their level without talking down to them. That was a really, really time-consuming and difficult process. Like writing this book didn't take as long as writing my big food book, but just because of the volume involved. But like page for page, this book took a lot more work than my recipe writing did, because I know how to talk to adults and I know how to write for adults, but like talking to kids and finding that right tone, and finding a tone that sounds natural and engaging and fun, and coming up with jokes that I think work both for children and the adults reading to the children. All that was just like a ton of work. So even, and when I first started this, I think, oh, like I'll write a children's book. It's easy. Like, anybody can write a children's book. It's just like 1,000 words. Kids love me. I say funny things to kids and they laugh. So, and then you quickly realize, oh no, like this is actually really, really difficult, like more difficult than writing for an adult. So I would say, the difficulty when something seems natural and seems engaging, there's probably a lot of work that went into getting it to that point. And Gianna can talk about the illustrations, the art style.
Yeah. So like part of the philosophy that I started to learn, while getting into children's books is like thinking about a child, and like when the parent is reading, maybe the kid doesn't know how to read quite yet, or is, kids start to look at the colors in the pages. So like this illustration that's up right now, making sure that there's details everywhere and like little things to find is really fun for kids, and making sure that there's like just like little hidden things. And so like you start to remember pages. Like I remember reading children's books when I was a kid, and like I had this beautiful ABC book. I forget what it was called, but it was just like you'd turn the page and it had the letter like G, and it was like all the things in the illustration was like grapes, gorilla, garden. So but they were all illustrated, and you just sit there and just like get lost in these these illustrations. It's crazy. So you know, for me, I was thinking about that and like making sure to like put in details and story details. And so like, you know, the homes, like, uh, you know, for the character who does Tajine, I like put in the background that like I had this narrative of like, oh, maybe she's like in college or she just graduated college and she's studying marine biology. So I like put dolphins and like there's like themes of, you know, and even the books, she has like a marine biology book. And um you know, so just like trying to keep that fun and, you know, and also rooted in sort of reality of like what people's homes are and what you know, you don't expect when you walk in the door. It's like, oh, you walk in your friend's house and they have like a crazy knitting collection. You're like, oh, I didn't know that about you. It's like, yeah, you know, the personal spaces. Or so, you know, just kind of also keeping assumptions out and all that stuff. But yeah, for keeping it creative, you know, you just I guess just daydream. You know, I daydream a lot, and I try to add layers, constant layers to everything. It's not just as simple as what you are seeing, you know.
Mhm. For me, one of the important things also, I would think back to the books that I loved as a kid, and features that I sort of enjoyed in them. And so, so like one of the things I really like is when there's like a running background sort of thing to look out for. And even as an adult, like reading children's books to my daughter now, like my favorite books are ones where there's like something going on in the background that happens from page to page that's not part of the story, but you don't really notice until you get through it, and then you can look back through it. So like, so like in this one, it's like what is the dog, what is Mozzarella the dog doing on every page? And he's in like every scene doing something funny in the background. And so for me, it's like you can read the book once, but then like, now my daughter likes going through it and like searching for the dog on each page and finding out what he's doing and laughing because he's doing something funny, like he's like in the dumpling truck, or he's um yeah, he's always doing something funny like that. Yeah, incorporating elements like that. And also I think what makes the book engaging, and the illustrations particularly engaging to me, is what Gianna was talking about, how all the characters are sort of fully fleshed out characters. Like they all have backgrounds and biographies that we sort of came up with, and descriptions of what the characters do and how they got to where they are, that are not explicitly stated in the story, but they all factor into like sort of what is going on in their various scenes. And so just by looking at the pictures, not in the words at all, just by looking at the pictures and seeing how the scenes are illustrated, you can sort of get a glimpse into the lives of these people and get a little bit of an understanding of who they are beyond just what is explicitly stated in the words. And I think that's in a children's book, it's like the illustrations do much more work than the words themselves do, because children are such visual learners.
Thanks. So the next question is from Fuggles993, addressed to
Good
Kenji.
screen name.
I know, it's great. My daughter turns 3 tomorrow and loves helping to cook. She peels veg, breaks eggs, grinds in a mortar, and stirs stuff, and is starting to taste and adjust seasoning. What else can we try?
Those are that's a lot of things so far. Those are most of the things my daughter does. My daughter's 3.5 now, and for the last few months she's actually like started working at the stove. So she knows how to always hold the handle with a towel, how to like stir with a spoon, how to stir with a spoon without, we practice stirring like on a cold pan first, just so I make sure that she's not gonna like flip pop food out everywhere. But she works at the stove now. She also loves measuring things. It's good for math development and for hand-eye coordination, measuring things. She's also started using a real knife now. Ever since she was we had, actually I have it right here because I'm sitting here. When she was little, she had one of these nylon knives. But even with these, like I sort of taught her, keep your fingertips tucked back and hold it like this. And so she learned proper knife skills pretty young. And so now she's moved on to actual, sharp knives, and she knows she knows that she's supposed to keep her hands like this. So I would say at 3, you can probably, if if they're advanced and you teach them the safety lessons, they can probably start working at the stove, as well as doing actual knife work on softer things.
Ambitious. Next question's from Nick for Gianna. What was the most interesting thing you learned from working with Kenji, and what surprised you the most?
Whoa. Think working. I mean, I didn't go in with many assumptions. This is my first children's book, so it was a whole learning process for me, and just writing. I guess the thing was the 100, was it 10,000 words? I was like, oh, okay. Like that was fun. But that was the most surprising thing, honestly. But no, I think the thing that was and still is lovely about working with Kenji is I think you're very aware of your position in life, and that you have always given me you just well, what does Gigi need, what like you were very like open and making sure that I was taken care of, and I really appreciated that, and I thought that was really lovely, and you don't get that a lot. And yeah, I think that I guess that's surprising, right? Is when you come across like a really sweet, genuine person, which is sad. But I just thought that I really enjoyed. Kenji has a lot of creativity within him too. Like, I think that the idea for like the Notebook, like, and Pizza Science, and like that was just like, okay, like sure, let's do it, like let's just try it and see what happens, and and that was really surprising. And yeah, you just came in with a lot of energy, and you were always upbeat and positive, and I think that is just, you just have these very wonderful qualities, and so working with you is and always will be just a pleasure. And I've just I just appreciate you, Kenji.
I appreciate you too.
Oh my gosh.
I know, I get sugary.
Okay, so the next question is, let's see, from Raquel for Gianna, and I think Kenji could also answer this. Any favorite Italian restaurants in the Bay Area that you would recommend?
I need a recommendation too.
That's pretty shady. Okay.
Well, I haven't been to many, so
I haven't been to that many either. I went to up in San Francisco. I don't think I've been to that many. I've been to Tosca, which I don't know if it's open still.
Sorta.
Open-ish. It was pretty good. But down here in San Mateo, there's a place that opened up like 3 or 4 years ago called Pausa, which is sort of modern Italian, but handmade pasta and pretty good pizza, great cocktails. I like Pausa a lot. It's definitely not like an old school, gingham tablecloth Italian red sauce Italian joint. It's much more modern than that. But yeah, I don't know. I don't frequently go out for Italian food. I feel like it's more of like an at-home thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I feel the same way. But Kenji, you recommended, it's not technically Italian, but I feel like it's sort of Italian, but it's like it's the Philadelphia hoagie shop. What is it?
Oh, Palm City Wines. Yeah.
That's very
yeah, that's a hoagie shop. They that place is great. They
Yeah.
opened up during COVID like a few months ago. So have you been there?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. And what did you think? I hope you liked it.
I do love a hoagie.
Yeah.
No, it was great. And it's
Yeah.
really perfect for just grabbing a sandwich and going to the beach too.
Yeah.
Just
Grabbing a
staring
giant
at the ocean.
sandwich.
Yes. Yeah. The fact that I don't normally see pork and broccoli rabe and that kind of sandwich.
Yeah.
It's very like niche sort of thing. So that like Philadelphia is an amazing sandwich town. So getting that was just like, oh, brought me back.
Oh, down here in San Carlos, there's also there's a New Haven style pizza joint called Pazzo. The owner's from New Haven, so New Haven I think is per capita the best pizza city in, I don't know, the world, definitely in the country. It's New Haven has very special pizza, but I think this is the best New Haven style pizza I've had outside of New Haven. And I know they do other stuff at that restaurant too. I've just never had any of their other stuff, but if you're looking for really good pizza, East Coast style pizza in the Bay Area, Pazzo in San Carlos.
If I can interject, I think my favorite Italian restaurant in the Bay Area is Bilotti, which also has a side like retail space called Bilotti Bottega, where you can buy like a 20-person lasagna if you wanted. It's amazing. It's so good.
It really contains 20 people?
I mean, you could fit 20
where
people
is it?
into a lasagna. It's in Oakland, in like the Piedmont area.
Ooh, near me.
Rockridge-ish, yeah.
Ooh,
Cool.
thank you for the recommendation.
Of course. I mean, that's my job. I have to have all the
It is your job.
recommendations. So we have, 2 minutes. So, real quick, if you can answer this. Kenji, do you have any real or imaginary dreams of your own food truck one day? And what food would it serve?
I, having gone through the ringer at the restaurant ringer like recently, I'm opening a restaurant a few years ago, and then all this stuff going on with COVID right now. I have no desire to open another restaurant in the near future. Although, long term, I would say if I opened up a food truck, or if I opened up another restaurant, it would be something very, very simple. It would probably be like a place that does fried chicken sandwiches and some kind of vegan sandwich, and that's it. Like, I would focus on like a place that does two things really well, like an omnivore dish and a vegan dish does them really well, and that's the only thing you come there for. I don't really have any desire of opening up like a full service restaurant ever again in my life.
I understand. Okay, finally, last question. It's an sorry, let me say this again. It is an informed tradition to ask all the speakers this following question. What is your 60-second idea to change the world?
Gigi?
Yeah, I mean, I think I first was going to go with empathy, but now I realize it's just, I think for me, and this is very childhood, right? I remember being a kid and being like, I just want peace and love throughout the world. And it's just like, and it seems so childish, but now like being an adult, I'm like, no, we should just do that. And we should just do that for everybody. And just like whatever that course is, whatever that direction is, the sustainability, like living in a world that's sustainable and doesn't have war all the time. I'm 33. I've never lived in a war. Like America's been at war all my life. And like, why, and just starting to question just what our reality is and what it can be. And I think that I just constantly question and look for the better solution. I guess that's it.
For me, I mean, realistically, it would be, get money out of politics and stop the cycle of capitalism. More, more thematically, I think we should have more pizza parties. We should have more parties where we invite strangers into our homes and share food, and gain a better understanding of each other by sharing food with each other, and then talk about ways we can get money out of politics and stop the cycle of capitalism.
Great answers. Both of you. So that's what we have for today's conversation. Many thanks to both of you. Jay Kenji Lopez Alt and Gigi Ruggiero for joining us today at Inforum at the Commonwealth Club. So their book, Every Night is Pizza Night, is now available for purchase at your preferred bookseller. Maybe not Amazon. If you'd like to watch more virtual programs or support the Commonwealth Club's efforts in making virtual programming, please visit commonwealthclub.org/online. I'm Soleil Ho. Thank you, and stay safe.